Hello, welcome back. If you saw my previous video, then you know that I in the process of making 4 custom quilted pillows. I decided to make 4 pairs of quilted pillows instead, because why make 4 of something when you can make 8 of something else? I always say, you always hear me say that. So the last video I made was making this Prairie Points pillow, and this was the new to me technique. And for every pillow that I make with a new to me technique, I also want to make one in a tried and true, already done traditional piecing technique, just in case the new to me technique turns out to be not my forte. And I actually really like the way that this one turned out, but that's not going to stop me from making another pillow. So the fabrics were already picked out, and this one was this Alexander Henry cactus print. I love it so much. And I have it in a different colorway, which is this green fabric that I have. Ooh. And so I decided to kind of use these spiky little succulents as my inspiration, and I wanted to make a winged square block, which when I started quilting about 10 years ago, winged square blocks were like all the rage. Everyone was making them, and I don't really know why I don't see them around as much anymore, except that I don't know that anyone ever wrote a pattern for it. It was just kind of on all the blogs and on Flickr, which was the thing at the time, and Instagram was kind of just becoming popular with quilters, and so you don't see as many of them tagged now, but I think they are so fun and so spiky looking, so that's why we're going to do our cactus block with those today. And I think there's such a good use of scraps, so we're also going to make some different sizes of them using some different sort of common, at least in my sewing room, common scrap sizes. Yeah, so let's get started. I've got my main kind of inspiration fabric that's going to be the pillow backing, and then it's also going to be my central print for the winged star block. Then I've got my 20-inch, because I'm making an 18-inch pillow, so I've got 20 inches square of batting, and this is just the quilt backing. So not the pillow backing, just the part that the pillow front is going to get quilted down to. So that's my 20-inch square of fabric there, and we've got my 20-inch square of batting, and then I've got my fabric here all ready to get turned into a pillow backing when it's time for that. But from this, I decided I went ahead and cut that out, because to make this 18 inches, this is like a very standard 9 patch, where 6 of the 9 patches are going to be made up of half square triangles. So once you put the half square triangles together into one of your patches, then it's just a straightforward 9 patch construction. So this is going to be the center of our 9 patch. So I really wanted it to be kind of the cutest piece. And so that's the one I chose. And then I decided to use the same background fabric as I used for my Prairie Points pillow. And that's this Ruby Star Society. You can see this is a cross weave. It's got kind of a sheen to it. A Ruby Star Society cross weave in, I think it's called Thunder. So it's kind of a navy. It's kind of a grayish navy. And then I decided to pick out my half square triangle fabrics, and I decided to get really scrappy with it, because this is a really great scrap block, like I said. So I'm going to use a lot of scraps today. And these are 5-inch squares that I'm going to turn into 3.5-inch half square triangles. And I'm going to do that with a die cutter, because if I can run something through a die cutter, I will do it in a second. I love to save time. I would love a laser cutter. Laser cutter is the dream. Die cutter is the reality that I'm living in. It is a discontinued die cutter. It's a Sizzix, so they don't really make them anymore. but I think an AccuQuilt is probably the same idea. So if you've got a die cutter, you're gonna want 3.5-inch half square triangles for this size of winged square block. That's gonna finish at 18 inches. We want a 6.5-inch central square. We're gonna want 2 6.5-inch background squares, and then we're gonna want 24 total half square triangles that are 3.5 inches unfinished. So these are what my little die cut pieces look like. This is the background fabric. And then that's gonna be half of the half square triangle, obviously. And then I chose these other fabrics from my 5-inch scraps to make the rest of my half square triangles. So I needed 12 of them to get my 24 half square triangles. So you're gonna get 2 triangles from each of them, each side. So I've got all the pinks that are gonna bring out all of those flowers, but just a variety of greens. I just recently used all of my green fabrics, I guess. So I did not have a ton, but I think those are gonna strike the right chord. And I wanted to go with kind of a variety of value. You know, I've got the light ones here, I've got the really saturated ones, I've got the dark ones, and I've got kind of the textured prints, and then I've got kind of the blander sort of blenders. And that is because I want to kind of create an ombre effect, because if I have an opportunity to make a gradient or a rainbow, I'm gonna take it. I'm not gonna squander that opportunity. So I'm gonna run these through my die cutter and turn them into half square triangles, and then I'll show you the rest. Okay, easy breezy. I've got my die cut pieces here. These are 3.5-inch half square triangle halves. I've got my solid background fabric over here. I've got my little scrappy prints over here. Just gonna sew these all together. Press them out, press them flat, and then stick them up where they should go over here. Okay, so you might be looking at this and wondering, what happened here? Why are these little gaps here? And that is because I think I didn't cut enough of my background squares yet. I needed 4 more little half square triangles of the background. And while that sounds like something I would do, I am gonna keep my eyes out for the responsible party, because it's probably not my fault. But so this is what the block is gonna look like. I've done a little bit of an ombre here, a little bit of gradient, so that the darker tones are on the outsides. The lighter colors are gonna be towards the center. And you might be looking at this giant block and thinking, this is not a great scrap busting block. I don't have a lot of scraps that are 6.5 inches like that center. Maybe 3.5 inches is too big for half square triangles for you, but that's okay, because we're also going to make some blocks using the Ruby Star Society 10 Years of Magic panel. I used the 4.5-inch squares that are in this panel as sort of fussy cut feature centers for the middle of a 12.5-inch block, 12.5-inch unfinished block. So this one's going to be 18 inches so that it will fit as a pillow, but you can make any size of this block. Well, not any size, any multiple of 3 of this block. So I'm going to make some 12.5-inch versions too and show you what those look like. Okay, so let's come right back to table view so that you can see what I've got going on here. So this is the 10 Years of Magic panel, and I've cut out all of the 4.5-inch pieces. So they look like this. And you could cut out really any of the pieces if you can do the quilt math. Like these ones are going to be about 2.5 inches. So if you have a lot of 1.5 inch unfinished half square triangles that you wanted to use up, if you like working with teeny tiny scraps, then that is the perfect little center for your winged star block using teeny tiny half square triangles. But I deal with much bigger things and I have a lot of 2.5 inch half square triangles. These are 2.5 inch unfinished. I get these from, offcuts of stitch and flip blocks. So anything where there's like a snowball corner, or even on flying geese blocks, you're gonna have little leftover bits that come off. And if you just sew them together right away, then you have a bunch of half square triangles. Or if you keep them uncut, then you can match them with different backgrounds and whatnot. So I've got a lot of these in my stash. So that's why I decided to use the larger pieces of this panel. So they're about, I gotta say about, because they're not quite 4.5 inches when you cut them up, but they will work. They will work. We will make it work. And this is them separated by designer because that's who I am. So we've got all the Melody Miller blocks and all the Sarah Watts blocks and all the Kimberly Kite blocks, the Alexia blocks, and the Rashida Coleman Hale blocks. And there weren't a lot of, there's a couple blues, but there weren't a lot of cool colors. This is kind of a retro, warm toned palette. So I decided to use the Arctic blue speckle for my background on this one. Also, I just happen to have some of it, so use what you have. So that works for me. And you can tell that I've already cut out and pieced together a bunch of half square triangles using that background fabric. And I did it just like I did the other ones, using my handy dandy die cutter. And then I got 4 half square triangle pieces from each of these 5-inch squares. So I used mostly 5-inch squares. Just picked kind of a variety of blenders in the same tones that we've had in our little cut pieces over here. And so I will show you what it looks like. I put one together. So this is the layout I came up with. I tried to go with kind of darker grayer tones on this side and bluer and turquoise tones over there, just to have some sort of difference between the two. Tried not to overthink it. This is me not overthinking it. I can't help but overthink it. This is why I'm so fun at parties. All right, so let's lay out one with our warmer tones. We also have some oranges and pinks over here. So if you're using 2.5-inch squares, you've got your 4.5-inch center block. And this one, I left on some of the selvage to make it a little closer to 4.5 inches. And that's just gonna get eaten up by our seam allowance. So I don't mind at all. So I think my not overthinking it is gonna be to put pinker ones on one side and oranger ones on the other side. So this is obviously an oranger one. So it's just gonna sit right there so that our square has wings, which is, I assume, how it got its little name. Got kind of a peachy one. And then all the half square triangles on either side, on either corner, are gonna face the same direction. So this one's gonna face the same direction as this one. These ones are all gonna face the same direction over here. Peachy one, and I'm gonna move that towards the center. Because again, this is me not overthinking it, but I really like a gradient. I really like, wherever possible, for there to be some order to placement. So my order in this one is gonna be that I'm gonna have it lighter in the middle going out to darker. I'm gonna have a little gradient. I don't have enough pink tones to really pull this off. So I'm gonna have to put some ones that I would think of as orangey over on that side. That's okay, because I am What am I doing? Not overthinking it. Doing a great job of thinking about it just the right amount. So through the magic of movies, I have found the missing pieces of background fabric. Whoever miscounted them is still at large, so be careful out there. This is what it looks like. And I pressed my seams open for those of you who pay attention to those sorts of things. So this is already pieced together and ready to baste to my backing, the quilt backing and the batting. It's not the pillow backing, just the quilt backing. And then I've pieced together my pieces, just my patches. Like I mentioned before, these blocks are made up of little 4 pieces, 6 of which are 4 patches. So once you have your triangles pieced, this comes together really easily. This is just a regular 9-patch block. And I've got my other one right here. So it's 9 pieces all together. And that's part of what makes this such a perfect scrap block, like I said, because for me, the perfect scrap project is one that you can put together in like your scraps of time also. Once you have your background pieces cut, like once I have all of these blue pieces cut, I can just put together a 4-patch of half square triangles in a little snippet of time, or at the end of another project as a leader and ender kind of thing. And then when I have enough of them, I can put them together in a 9-patch and I've got a whole block. So it's a really good use of kind of interesting feature fabrics that you want put in the middle, like these ones from this panel, or you could put together like a rainbow where you're putting together all of your red half square triangles and all of your orange half square triangles, and then you don't even have to pay attention to the layout while you're piecing those together. And that is another thing that I think makes it just a really easy scrap project that you don't have to think about the layout too much. I did overthink this one, but that is how I operate. And it's also nice when your feature fabric in the middle can be like 2-toned. So on this one, we had kind of our oranges and our pinks. Or if you had one that was black and white, then you could have the black fabrics down here and the white ones up here to set it off. Or, you know, cool colors and warm colors, however it works out. But adorable. So now I'm ready to quilt this one, and I'm really happy with the gradient that we went with, because on a small piece like this, I feel like every single little placement decision matters even more, because there's only so many pieces in the whole thing. But quilting this is going to be a job for tomorrow. So I will see you tomorrow. And just like that, it's tomorrow, and I am ready to do the quilting on this pillow. Close up? I should close up. So I hate marking on a quilt. I don't trust the ink in the pens. I don't trust the chalk is going to come out. I should experiment with that a little more because it is kind of limiting. But I am going to use this Hera marker. And this is just, it's not a marker. It's just a plastic, like blunt tipped wedge. It looks like this. And you're just going to use it to sort of make depressions in your quilt so that you can quilt along the lines. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to quilt this by using my Hera marker. And then I'm going to put my walking foot on here so that all of those layers are going to move evenly through my sewing machine. And I'm going to quilt it up with my walking foot. We're going to be ready to turn it into a pillow. Boom. Last line. So now it's all done. And check out that beautiful grid. Do a close up. You can see it's already quilted on its little quilt back. So now it's all ready. It's all quilted. We're going to prepare a little back for it, a pillow back this time, using our special inspiration fabric. And this time I wanted to center this motif on the back because it matches the one on the front. So I'm gonna have to sew it a little differently than I did last time because that's not where the fold is. I'm gonna have to sew it into a little loop with my right sides together, and then I'll press it and sew it like this so that just this part is right in the center. So it's just a little bit different than last time, but I really want just that special cactus in the middle, and I'm gonna do what it takes to get. Okay, so wait, what are you looking at? Oh, they've multiplied. I love it when they do that. So cute. It seems like they only multiply when I'm procrastinating on something else. So I don't know why that is. I guess science will have to work on that. I also have a bigger size, an even bigger size. So this was my 18-inch finished block that I'm turning into a pillow, because that's the perfect size. These were my 12-inch finished blocks that I'm working on with my 4.5-inch squares from my 10 Years of Magic Ruby Star Society panel. And then these are 24-inch finished blocks using a layer cake, and then I have kind of slightly fussy cut from fat quarters the center square, which is 8.5 inches. And these are so big at 24 inches finished. If you just used 4 of these, you could make a baby quilt that was 48 inches square. And if you use 9 of them, just 9 blocks, you've got a 72-inch square quilt, which is pretty big. My math, you should check that. I will put a link. I'll just put a PDF that you can download on my website that has the sizes for these that you would need for your half square triangles and for your center squares and for your background squares and all the different sizes so that you don't have to do the quilt math in these scrap blocks. But you could get a full, let's see, I think my math is right. You could get a full 72-inch quilt from 1 layer cake and some background fabric. So this is pretty awesome. So this is the big square. We've got a couple of those happening because they've just multiplied. So what I also have though is my finished pillow top. We're going to turn it over to the back that's already quilted. Let's move some of these cuties. Let's stick this up to see. And we've got our pillow backing. Remember, I folded the fabric and then I top stitched it to make it look extra slick, but also to give it some structure. If you wash it, you don't want those to get all wrinkled. Nobody wants to iron a pillow cover. So we've top stitched it in 2 places. We're going to line that up on the bottom. And then we have stitched this and then rotated it so that we get our special flowering cactus in there. You know, that was important to me. And then I'm going to layer it over here, not the whole way, because that's going to make the seam way down here at the bottom, but just enough that it's overlapping by 6 inches or so. That's how I like it to be. We'll make sure it's all straight on the edges. And then once that's lined up, I'm just going to clip along the sides, and then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to stitch all around the pillow and then cut off the excess. Easy breezy. And boom, she's done. Here's the finished product. Let's see if I can zoom in. We use the same binding as I did on the other project, which is a navy blue speckled from Movie Star Society. She's got our special inspiration fabric featured on the front. And this is with her pillow cousin. We've got the purple cacti. There was a better way to display those, but I don't know it. We got the purple cacti, we got the green cacti, and they're both the envelope pillow back, which I kind of love. I'm a love-hate relationship. I love it because they're so soft and squishy. You're not going to get snagged on the zipper. Maybe I'll do a zipper binding on the next set of pillows. But this was my new to me technique, so I hope you'll go back and watch that video on Prairie Points to get that scaled mermaid look. And then this was our winged square block, and I hope you'll go and download that PDF that I made with all of the quilt math. And I can't wait to see what you make with this block. Thanks for joining me.